Hello everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here and welcome to this video where I'm going to explain some of the key differences that you will notice if you're looking to make the transition from Code 1 to N4. Now, if you're just too lazy to read the rules or you just fancy listening to things, then this is definitely the video for you because I'm going to outline some of the 10 biggest differences that you would notice if you were to start to go from Code 1 to N4. Now, one of the first things you notice is that if you open up the Code 1 Army app, you'll notice that there are only 4 factions there at present. The big thing that you'll notice when you go to N4 is that there are a lot more factions. You've got pretty much all of them. There are 1 or 2 exceptions based on various reasons, or because they're not yet ready, but you will have access to pretty much all of the major ones. So if you fell in love with Nomads and got a little bit frustrated that you couldn't play them in Code 1, the good news is that you'll definitely be able to play them in N4. The other major thing you'll notice as you start to dive slightly deeper within your chosen faction is that there are more units. Now, there's a slight difference in how the points translate from Code 1 to how they translate to N4, so you might need to familiarise yourself with that. You might not be able to take so many of the bigger units as you're used to in Code 1, but you'll definitely have more options. Now, that's because Corvus Belli decided to take away some of the more complicated units from Code 1 so that you could just focus on learning the rules and the mechanics whilst also having a bit of fun. As soon as you go to N4, there's more complicated units, they've got special abilities that you might not be familiar with. The good news is that there is the wiki, and there's also a great community of people out there to help you. So things like tags, you'll actually recognise from Code 1, and you'll also recognise them in N4. But you may notice some units with peripherals, for example, or biker units that you aren't familiar with seeing. Have a good look at them. It's good to have some variety in your army list, and it's good for you to familiarise yourself with what other armies have as well. Now, more orders. That's a prime example of where you're going to see a huge difference from Code 1 to N4. So in Code 1, you have 1 order pool filled with 10 units generating regular orders, plus there's the Lieutenant order. When you jump to N4, you have 2 order pools with a maximum of 15 order generating units, and you can divide those between the pools as you like, so 10 and 5 or 7 and 6. I think that's good maths. That's probably not. 7 and 8, I think that is. Then you also have more types of orders. So you've got your regular order, which you'll be used to seeing. You've also got, obviously, your Lieutenant order, which you will also be used to seeing. But there's also irregular orders, which you can only spend on the unit that has generated that order. And there's also Impetuous, which is a special order in addition to a regular order. And there's special rules attached to it, like where you have to head and what you have to do when you choose to spend it. So definitely something new to learn in terms of the orders that get generated and how they get spent. You might also have a unit that generates more than 1 Lieutenant order, for example. That's something new, that's what you'll get used to, but that is a major thing that you might notice when you jump from Code 1 to N4. Another thing you'll notice are command tokens. Now, every player gets 4 command tokens when they start a game in N4, and they can be spent however you like to generate a tactical or strategic advantage. So an example of that might be that if you're going second, you can choose one of your units and put them on suppression by spending one of the command tokens. You could also strip your opponent, or you could choose to strip your opponent's order pool by 2 orders, for example, unless they've got some special abilities. You might also decide to hold an additional unit back, in addition to the one that you're allowed to do, just to give yourself a bit more of a tactical surprise and a tactical advantage. Command tokens are pretty cool. You could use them in game as well to turn an irregular order into a regular order, those sorts of things. Move units from one order pool to another. Lots of things. Command tokens are strategic elements that can be deployed during the game, but you're limited to 4 unless you have a special unit that generates extra ones. So command tokens add a bit to the game. Your Lieutenant is another big thing that might change from Code 1 to N4. In Code 1, Lieutenants don't do a whole heap. You use their whip value for the initiative roll, and there might be a mission where you've got to hunt down Lieutenants. They generate their own order, but other than that, they're not super special. In N4, they're a little bit more special. For example, other units could potentially use that Lieutenant order. They're called NCOs, and some Lieutenants even generate 2 orders. Losing your Lieutenant can actually be devastating for your army and the game you're trying to play, because what happens next turn, if you're in a loss of Lieutenant state, is that all of your troopers just generate an irregular order, which they can only spend on themselves, unless they have something like Veteran, in which case they generate a regular order. That can make it really difficult for you to complete the mission if every unit can only spend 1 order. That doesn't help if you want to push a certain model ahead. You can protect against this by including a chain of command unit in your list who would become your leader if your lieutenant dies. So in N4, hunting lieutenants is good, if you know where to look. There's more strategy available within N4 than there is in Code 1. Not only do you have more strategic choices when spending an order, but the breadth of your strategic options in your army increases. In Code 1, you would have been familiar with some of the strategy that you can deploy in a game. You spend your first short skill to move within line of sight of an enemy, and then the enemy declares their ARO, for example, and then you declare your second short skill. Now, sometimes you would have in your mind exactly what you want your second short skill to be. In other situations, you might wait and see what your opponent declares and then choose your second short skill, knowing that your choice might be better based on the ARO that they have decided to declare. In N4, that gets expanded hugely. You also get more deployment options, for example. So you get hidden deployment, which means that the trooper starts on the table, but you take a photo of them before deployment is finished and remove them without your opponent seeing. That is a secret hidden deployed model which you can activate at any stage. As I said before, you get the potential to hold back 2 units instead of 1, and you can negate people from using command tokens against you. You have things like Guard, which enable you to make a close combat attack against someone you're not in close combat with. I know, it seems crazy. You've just learned that in order to do close combat, you've got to get within silhouette contact with a unit, and then one rule comes along in N4 that basically says that's not always the case. There are only a few units with that special ability, but it's well worth you knowing just in case it happens. You've got something like Berserk, which enables you to make a close combat attack on someone having moved both of your movement distances. So in that example, what you would have learned in Code 1 is that you would move 4 to get into silhouette contact with someone, and then your second short skill, you could declare a CC attack. With someone who has Berserk, they can move the 4 of their first short skill, then move, say, the 4 inches of their second short skill, and then still make a CC attack at the end of that. Now, it sounds complicated, and it kind of is. Basically, there's more options for winning the game and crafting a list that suits you, but the offset to that is that there is more complexity, which is definitely the big caveat with if you're going from Code 1 and you're going to N4, it's going to be layers and layers of additional things to learn, which is fantastic because there's also additional things that you can do, but more complexity. With all that good stuff comes the bad. Code 1 is a simpler game than N4, which makes it perfect for simple, less challenging, casual games. N4 is a great step up, but be prepared to read the rules and make mistakes as you forget certain things and forget a unit's ability from time to time. There's almost no ceiling to how complex N4 can be if you want it to, but likewise, your local group can keep it casual and still have fun. Also adding into that complexity are sectorials. When playing Code 1, there are only vanilla list building options on offer. Now vanilla kind of means plain Jane, does exactly what it says on the tin. There's no necessarily fanciness to it in terms of special rules and special makeups. Step up to N4 and sectorials become a thing. So sectorials are kind of factions within a faction. They're like a really specialized army that sacrifices some units, so it doesn't have availability to use those, for fire team combos. Fire teams enable you to use certain models in linked teams to reduce order expenditure and gain bonuses, but at the sacrifice of flexibility and with added complexity. For example, a sectorial, like O12 Star Marder or any of them, enables you to combine certain units into 2, 3, 4 or 5 unit fire teams. Each level of that, so how many units are made up of that fire team, unlocks certain bonuses. You can move all units in a fire team using one order, for example, but they have to stay within 8 inches of each other, and only the linked team leader can do things, like shoot, push buttons, discover, close combat attack, etc. These are cool, but definitely add a layer of complexity to the game. I must admit, I rarely use sectorials because my head can barely wrap itself around my vanilla list building options, let alone adding fire team bonuses to that as well. You have to learn about sectorials because you will probably face them at some stage. Someone will want to take a link team and they'll take a sectorial as a result. So you'll definitely learn a little bit about how they play, but it's one thing to face them and know how to counter them, and another thing to actually use them effectively. Talking about using things effectively, hacking increases when you move from Code 1 to N4. So in Code 1, you have 2 hacking programs which all hackers have access to. In N4, you have 4 different hacking devices, each with listed programs those devices can access. You can also hack through your army's repeaters, extending the range of your hacking attack dramatically, and you can even deploy your own repeaters to pin an enemy down. In this edition, there are lots of hackable heavy infantry and tags, so using these programs and tools is very important to the mastery of the game. You'll notice that hacking has become increasingly popular if you have played N3 because of the prevalence of heavy infantry and tags. So even though there are 4 devices with different programs available, they're actually really simple to use and a lot less complex, so definitely give them a go at some stage, even if you're just familiarizing yourself with how they work. As well as hacking options, you may notice slightly more close combat options as well. There's the martial arts table, where there's 5 levels available, which will enable you to boost your attacks by taking units that have martial arts abilities. That can be countered by a unit that has something like Natural Born Warrior, which cancels all of the effects of martial arts. I'm just doing this not to scare you, but to give you an idea as to the layers of complexity that get added. But to be honest, if I can remember those sorts of rules, then they're very easy to remember, which means they're very easy to play or counter or learn about. But the big thing that you're probably going to notice if you make the transition from Code 1 to N4 is actually that lots of things are very similar. The basics of the game remain unchanged from Code 1 to N4, and that's kind of the beauty of stepping up from Code 1 into N4. Code 1 has been designed to be an intro into N4, so by playing Code 1 you're actually in a better position than some people coming from N3, as they have more to forget. So give it a go! Why not take the rules and play some basic missions with a friend? It is going to be a lot to learn, but it's actually pretty easy to get the basics of it. One of the tips that I could give you is to print off your list when you do go into a game, because it's going to be quicker to reference the weapons charts, the basic profiles like movement, orders, and some of the basic skills. But also take the time to look into some of the key rules around some of the units that you are taking. If a cornerstone of your army, for example, has repeater, what does that mean? Well, it means that your hackers can use that repeater as if it was their zone of control. So you can use their 8-inch radius to hack an enemy opponent. Familiarize yourself with the hacking programs. What does a killer hacking device mean? Oh, that's going to focus mostly on killing other hackers. It's not really going to have any ability to boost the rest of the army's ability to use that hacking program to kill an opponent, for example. What does that mean? Hidden deployment, camo tokens, mine layer, all those sorts of rules you might have to familiarize yourself with. But the excellent news is that you know the fundamentals already. You know how to use regular orders, you know how to spend short skills, you know how to move around the table pretty well. Not a lot has changed in that regard. There's lots of really positive things in moving from Code 1 to N4, but I also want you to remember that if you never ever transition away from Code 1, you're still playing Infinity. You're still a member of the community. That Code 1 game is exceptional. I played it for several months before N4 came out and I loved it. It's a fantastic game in its own right. All N4 does is just give you more to play with from Code 1. So it's perfect if you're finding that Code 1 isn't challenging you enough, or you want more complexity, or you want to give something bigger and different a go. But Code 1's still great fun. It's an excellent place to start. I will always recommend that anyone who wants to play Infinity starts with Code 1, and then once they're comfortable and they're happy, then transition to N4. Don't jump straight in at the deep end. It's going to be a lot to learn, and it might be overwhelming. Code 1 makes all of this a lot easier for you to understand and a lot more achievable and accessible. So give it a go. Give Code 1 a good crack. Then when you're ready, make the jump to N4, but don't do it before you're ready, because you don't want to spoil yourself and put yourself off the experience when you might be ready later on down the track. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I always do appreciate it. I hope this has helped some of you if you are making to look at that jump. Jump in the comments below if you found this helpful at all. Jump in the comments if you've made the jump from Code 1 to N4 and you feel like I should have mentioned something and didn't. And then that means that anyone who is watching this, check out the comments below, because you might see something that someone's mentioned that would be useful for you. Thank you so much for following the channel, or at least watching this video. If you do want to see more Infinity related content, whether it's Code 1 or N4, please hit subscribe, maybe hit that little bell to notify yourself when a new video gets released, and I will be back shortly with another video. Thanks again, catch you soon.